Welcome, my dear friends, to this, my festival of theologically biased translations. We all need translations of the Bible every now and then, even if we read the original languages, okay. But translations are just those things that smart Bible readers love to hate, because they seem to place a barrier between God's Word and me. And yet those barriers, frustrating as they are so inevitable. Even to speak or to read in a language at all, I think one could say, is to access the world through some kind of lens, darkly, to pick up one of Paul's phrases in 1 Corinthians, okay? And so this idea that we could just have immediate access to the Word is just a tough one. No immediate access to reality. What I'd like to do here is provide a non-comprehensive list of some of my favorite translation examples wherein we can see the theological, political, cultural bias of the translators transparently at work. Not saying these are the best examples, not saying these are the only ones, just saying that these are ones that kind of make me feel... How do these make me feel? Some of these are enraging. Warning, there's going to be rage. I will show rage during this video, friends. Some of these are just difficult to understand. Some of them we do understand, and we laud and praise the work of translators to make the Word of God accessible to human beings. But we also just wish that they had not so baldly and openly placed this layer of interpretation over the top of the translation. All translation is interpretation to some degree, and we can debate about the degree. I don't think, though, that should be a license for just openly presenting one's interpretation as a neutral translation of a text. And Bibles do have this apparatus of footnotes, of notes on the side and on the bottom, where if you do a move like this, you can at least have a note suggesting a different way. In many of the cases, though, that I'll present to you here, in this festival of bias, there is no note. The translation is simply rolled out as though this is just what the text says. And frankly, it's not. One other thing I will point out is to say that Christians have been, on the whole, very friendly toward translations throughout Christian history. When you read the New Testament and you read quotes of the Old Testament in the New Testament, of which there are dozens, maybe hundreds, probably hundreds actually, those quotes are actually coming in Greek from the Septuagint, from a variety of Septuagint manuscripts we now know. And so already in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, Christians were open enough to translation to basically use the Greek Bible. So much so that Richard Hayes in his book Reading Backwards even suggests near the end, I mean, it's not a strong suggestion, he doesn't go on and on about it, but he says, if the New Testament authors thought that the Greek Septuagint was, this translation of the Old Testament was so authoritative that they would quote it and read it and use it, maybe we should be reading the Septuagint today in translation or even in the original Greek as our authoritative translation of the Bible as Christians. So that's a very provocative suggestion, one which I do not follow. But at any rate, it shows us how open and how friendly Christians have been toward translation. And even Catholics. I mean, sometimes Catholics get a bad review on this issue of being against translations. And certainly there were periods of Catholic history, particularly in the high medieval period of the 1200s through the 400s, where, you know, there were inquisitions and various kinds of crackdowns on translations and things of this nature. But on the whole, Catholics have, of course, produced translations in various vernaculars, German and Italian and French, even before the Reformation, and responded to Reformation translations with their own. The Latin Vulgate of the medieval Catholic Church was, of course, itself a translation meant to make the Word of God accessible to people. So I don't think it's fair to say that Catholics have been translation unfriendly, even as they've tried to restrict in hierarchical ways who would be doing the translations and under what circumstances. And one could compare this, not by way of saying one is better or worse, but could compare it to traditional Islamic theology, which I understand, I'm an outsider to that field, but I understand that traditional Islamic theology says that the Quran is only really the Quran in Arabic, in the Arabic in which it was first given as a revelation or spoken. Many contemporary Muslims are also very friendly toward translation, attempts, which you can tell by going on the internet and finding lots of translations of the Quran. But given that there's that stream in Quranic theology of a traditional type against translation, it shows that languages are very holy and there can be restrictions. Okay, having said that, let us begin the festival. I'm just gonna plow through these. First example, Genesis 3:16 in the English Standard Version of the Bible, 2001 edition. To the woman, he, God, said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Genesis 3:16 from the ESV, 2016 revision. To the woman, he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, and he shall rule over you. Do you hear the difference there? Contrary versus for. One more time, Genesis 3:16, ESV 2025 revision. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband. Back to the 2001 edition. And he shall rule over you. So for a 9-year interim, and by the way, I have another video just on this point, which I'll link below, to celebrate their change back to their original translation, for your husband rather than contrary. But for a 9-year interval in there, from 2016 to 2025, we had this odd translation, contrary to your husband. Why? Basically, I'm skipping a lot of explanation here. I have a document linked below that you can look at. I wrote it and have collected it. It's called Material Concerns, Canon, Textual Criticism, and Translation That Matters for Biblical Interpretation. So give it a read. Feel free to use it and cite it however you want. I'll keep updating it, but you can see a longer explanation there. But basically, where does this come from, this contrary translation? Well, it comes from a view that was promoted first in an article in the 1970s, rather obscure, but it picked up steam and they picked up on this idea, at least, that what they wanted to do, essentially, I mean, this is the theological bias, I'm just cutting straight to it. I think they wanted to basically root or ground the idea of feminist desires to be contrary to a husband in the sinful act, in human nature. Essentially in this moment. So rather than seeing, as one scholar puts it, rather than seeing the fall and the curses and all this stuff as descriptive of the way that this is the broken way things are now because of our sinful choices. The ESV 2016 revision, contrary to your husband, wants to make this prescriptive. Men and women are naturally in a war for dominance. The woman's desire is contrary to her husband's rule, right? Maybe they're in this contest just during this life, or maybe even like literally eternally, okay? This is just the way that men and women are. The ESV is sometimes billed as the anti-NRSV, so it's like the conservative response to the NRSV, which is the NRSV goes out of its way to promote egalitarian gender relations whenever it can. So the ESV went out of its way to promote this weird idea that the woman's desire is contrary to her husband and he will rule over her. But then they changed it back. Okay, let's go on to another example. Oh, this one. I told you the rage was going to come out, and here it is. I want to compare, okay, now I'm not even going to compare. Exodus 6, 2-3. This is the NIV 2011. I have to say 2011 because the NIV has rolled out, confusingly, several versions of itself. The 1984, but then an attempted revision in 1997, which people hated, and which then they rolled back and didn't do. Then the TNIV, infamously, Today's New International Version 2005, which people hated so much that the NIV tried to bury it with another version, essentially, of the TNIV, which kept a lot of the changes, the NIV 2011. So, brief history of the NIV Bible there. It is the most popular Bible in English translation. I think something like between 400 and 500 million copies in circulation. It's the most popular Bible of at least my own tribe, at least by upbringing and by culture, conservative Protestant evangelicals. And so I'm going to feel free to vent about the NIV. And that's just the way it is. Exodus 6, 2-3, NIV 2011. God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. This is the divine name, the revelation of the name at the burning bush. I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Israel, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, Yahweh, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. Now that's just a straightforward translation into Hebrew, but that's not what the NIV says here. Rather, they say, but by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. Hebrew has qualifying words. Hebrew has adjectives. Where is this word fully in the Hebrew text? Not there. So why did they add it when every other translation here just says, but by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them? Well, they're anticipating, they're doing apologetics here. In what sense? Why? Well, because, as is well known, God does indeed make himself known by his name, the Lord, Yahweh, several times in the Torah before this moment in Exodus 6. Genesis 4:26, people began calling on the name of the Lord, the text says. Genesis 15, Abraham says, Lord, Lord, by name, 18:19, etc., and I think several more times. So the NIV is trying to fix this problem for us by inserting the word fully so that we can still acknowledge that God had used the name before Exodus 6, but that it was not full knowledge. Now, maybe that's an interpretive solution you could take, but to just put that in the translation, it's just devious. I hate it. I hate it so much. What are some other ones in this carnival of theological bias? I'm going to skip that one. It's not that interesting. Oh, this one. Oh, this one. This one's a lot. This one's a lot. I just can't. Okay. 2 Samuel 21:19. Tucked away at the end of 2 Samuel, we have the exploits of David's men. This also, the NIV 2011. In another battle with the Philistines at Gov, Elhanan, son of Yair, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. I thought David killed Goliath the Gittite with the spear and the, what's that? Kind of strange. I mean, this is what the Hebrew text says. You have another, maybe some critical scholars would say a variant account, maybe an earlier account before the David account of someone killing Goliath. And so the interpretive story goes, this story was too good to waste on this nobody, Elhanan, and so they reattributed that killing to David, even as we still have this little fragment about Elhanan. Another way to solve it could be to say that Elhanan was another name for David, but this doesn't really work at all. But again, I tricked you. That's not really what the NIV says. The NIV says, 2 Samuel 21:19, in another battle with the Philistines at Gov, Elhanan, son of Yair the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. They have inserted the phrase the brother of with no textual warrant whatsoever in Hebrew in the text of 2 Samuel. They did it because in 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5, which repeats this, as Chronicles often repeats parts of Samuel and Kings, the chronicler actually tried to do a solution just like this. There the text reads, Elhanan killed the brother of Goliath. So what the NIV has done is normed the passage in 2 Samuel with the chronicler's attempt to solve this infamous problem of who killed Goliath. But just to put that directly in the text with no warrant whatsoever, harmonizing it, trying to make sure that we don't get sad about a contradiction. Hey, NIV 2011, we're not stupid. We're not babies. Maybe some of us are stupid, and maybe I am a baby sometimes. Okay, but we're better than that. Come on. Psalm 1 is kind of an interesting example. I saw this one recently. Someone pointed it out on a website that has 75 examples of NIV translations that they hate. I have this linked in my document, material concerns link below. But tracking the way that the NIV through the NIV 1984, 2005, and 2011 treats the identity of the individual, the person, ha'ish in Hebrew, the man, who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, who does not stand in the way of sinners. Now, one of the most infamous debated aspects of the NIV's revisions has to do with gender, taking male-specific language in many cases and making it gender neutral. Here, in the NIV 1984, which has just a basic, what I think is a correct translation, Ashrei Ha'ish, blessed is the man who does not walk, lo holek, in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, okay? It's the man. Ha'ish just means the man. And then you follow this with singular masculine pronouns. His delight is in the law. On his law he meditates. He is like a tree. Whatever he does prospers. The TNIV, though, tried to fix this by going plural, by going those and they and them. So they did, blessed are those who do not walk in step with the wicked, but who delight, they are like a tree, whatever they do prospers. Now, one criticism of this here, and one criticism of the way that gender-neutral translations, as well-intended as they are, sometimes play out, is that they erase specific nuances of the text that are actually important for us to hear. So in this case, one could say this psalm gains some of its power from the fact that the ha'ish, the man, the singular man, is truly singular, but the sinners are plural and the mockers are plural. And it's like the counsel of the wicked and the way of sinners and the seat of mockers. You've got all this sinning and mockery all around you, but there you are, an individual. Can you delight in the law of the Lord, even if you're all on your own? And that's the power of the singular ha'ish there. But they've just completely ruined that by making it plural, right? So NIV 2011 goes back to a singular interpretation, translation, but they do it by erasing the male imagery. NIV 2011, Psalm 1, blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked. Whose delight? That person is like a tree. But they have to slip in, and there's another criticism of these gender-neutral translations is you sometimes have to then slip in a plural in place of a singular. So in verse 3, whatever they do prospers. So they avoided saying whatever that one does prospers, which I guess they could have done to avoid saying they, but they didn't, and so there you have the they. So you get this little journey from 1984 to 2005 to 2011 in Psalm 1. Who is walking, who is not walking with the sinners? The man, those, and now the one. Now we're down to the one. Oh, this one. Speaking of gendered translations, Isaiah 19:16 in the NIV 2011. In that day, the Egyptians will become weaklings. They will shudder with fear at the uplifted hand that the Lord Almighty raises against them. Take that, Egyptians. How would you feel if you were an Egyptian today reading the Bible? The Bible's just trashing you in your country over and over again. Of course, contemporary Egypt is not ancient Egypt. One of my friends, scholar Safwat Marzouk, is an Egyptian scholar by ancestry and does great scholarship on this. So shout out to Safwat on that point. In that day, the Egyptians will become weaklings. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that the Hebrew here is actually nashim, women. So the text reads, in that day, the Egyptians will be like women, which the NRSV reads like women. So what have they tried to do? They've tried to erase what is truly a painful gendered image here, the idea of downgrading some people that they'll be like women, by calling them weaklings instead, which is the intended meaning, so the NIV translators thought, and they give us that. They do this also in Nahum, I believe, at one point, where women are used as a kind of slur for weaklings and so on. This one's interesting. So in Matthew chapter 1, I won't go through every example here, but in Matthew 1:4, 1:7, and 1:10, also the NIV 2011, the translators have taken several names, names that Matthew actually lists in the genealogy incorrectly in terms of the names given in the Old Testament by Old Testament tradition. So-and-so is the father of so-and-so is the father of so-and-so. Names like Aram and Asaph and Amos, or Aram, Asaph, and Amos, I guess you could pronounce them. Those names are there in Matthew 1:4, 1:7, and 1:10, but the NIV has actually just straight up changed the name to Ram, Asa, and Ammon, which is the correct Old Testament version, but that's not actually what the Greek text says. So the NIV made a correction, and I don't even think they even make any notes in the text to say this. They could footnote them, but they just introduce it just to make sure that we know that Matthew has not made an error. Now this one, but this one's even better. This is Matthew 13:32 in the NIV. Again, let's watch the journey. Matthew 13:32. Matthew 13:32 in the NIV 1984 reads as follows. This is Jesus in the parable talking about the mustard seed and moving mountains. Though it is the smallest of your seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that birds come and perch in its branches. Beautiful. One little problem there. The Greek text does not say, though it is the smallest of your seeds. It actually has the Greek definite article, ton, the there, not your. Though it is the smallest of the seeds, is really the way that it reads. So why did they say your seeds? Well, because they don't want to have Jesus making a botanical error, because the mustard seed is not the smallest of all seeds, literally. So they changed Jesus's words to say, though it is the smallest of your seeds, as if like, well, maybe it's the smallest seed in the region, okay? Even in the NIV 2011, which they do change this and fix it, though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, now all seeds also isn't what it says. The text says, as NRSV has it, literally, the mustard seed is the smallest of all the seeds, which makes it sound like really it's the smallest of all the seeds. But by removing the definite article tone there and just having it say the smallest of all seeds, I don't know, maybe they do this to make the phrase sound a little more folksy, smallest of all seeds, and just less literal. I'm not really sure what they're trying to do there. They're very worried about this issue of the seed, though, and what we'll think of it. Oh, here's one, just a blatant, and I'll just to show you, I'm not just hating on the NIV. This is from the Good News Bible. And I'll read the NIV 2011 as an example of a correct translation here. Jesus says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. What a hard saying, this anti-family rhetoric. It's very notable in Jesus' sayings. It's tough. What do you do with it? Luke 14:26 in the Good News Bible, with a single, I believe a single translator there. It might not even claim to be a totally literal translation, but it reads, whoever comes to me cannot be my disciple unless he loves me more than he loves his father, his mother, his wife and children. So, the Greek there, miseo, hate, really is hate. Apparently it's not good news to hate your family, so we change it. Okay. How many more of these are we going to do, friends? How many more? Okay, I'll just do one more. This one's a little more nuanced. Might take me a second. Hang in there. I know you've hung in there for 21 minutes if you've watched this so far. But if you're enjoying this, you just can't get enough, okay? Romans 16:1. Paul is ending the letter. He's thanking various people. NRSV. He says, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church at Kenchkria. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. The word there for deacon, of course, is diakonos. The etymology of our word for minister is servant. Diakonos means a servant, someone who serves. This word is used all over the place in the New Testament, appears a lot in the Gospels, and appears all over the Pauline corpus. Now, let's read Romans 16:1 in the NIV 2011. I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a servant of the church at Kenchkria. Okay, a deacon, a servant. If it can really mean servant or minister or deacon, why not just translate it deacon or servant or minister willy-nilly in any one place? Just because we translate a word one way in one place doesn't mean we have to do it that way in every other place. And to be sure, the NIV has different translations of this word diakonos in different places. That's not my beef here. My beef is with the way that they do it here versus the way that they do it elsewhere. Follow me. And again, I want to point out that this word diakonos is used in various places where it can mean servant. Like Jesus famously says in Matthew 20:26, whoever wishes to be great among you must be your diakonos, your servant. And there that translation seems to make sense. Now, when in the NIV 2011, when Paul refers to himself or to Jesus as a diakonos, the translation is almost always servant. And if you look at my material concerns document, you can scroll down to this example and you can find textual examples of where this happens. No problem there, makes sense. I guess it could even be minister. Deacon would be a little weird if he's speaking informally, because deacon, as we know, even from contemporary church traditions, can refer to a specific hierarchical position of leadership in a church, right? But a consistent pattern emerges in Paul's writings when he refers to named male individuals. Colossians 1:7 and 4:7, for example, two males, Epaphras and Tychicus, are called faithful ministers. Diakonos is the word there. Same underlying language. In Greek, though, in Ephesians 6:21, there, Tychicus is called a faithful servant. So why call him a minister in one place and then a servant in the other? I don't really know, but it's the same word, diakonos. But back to the theme. Named male individuals get called, in 1 Thessalonians 3:2, the male Timothy is called a brother and a co-worker. And it's that phrase co-worker, which the underlying Greek is diakonos. And in Philippians 1:1, we get a more formal translation of diakonos as a role, right? These are the deacons to whom it's addressed. And that, by the way, that diakonos translation as deacon, transliterated as a formal role or title in the church, appears again in 1 Timothy 3:8, 3:10, and 3:12. And you can note the male context specifically in 1 Timothy 3:12. A deacon, diakonos, must be faithful to his wife, so the male identity is assumed there, and must manage his children and household well. So now the payoff. When we arrive back at Phoebe, poor Phoebe, female Phoebe, in Romans 16:1, What exactly is it, I ask, that prompts the NIV 2011 to now just translate this named woman, her role as not co-worker, not minister, and not deacon, but rather servant? It seems like that term is a little bit diminutive, like it seeks to demote Phoebe to the role of a servant, kind of like she's a little servant girl hanging around. Whereas the NRSV, one could argue, actually seeks to promote Phoebe to this named transliterated role of deacon, whereas the NRSV, and I should point this out the other way, when the NRSV does the named male figures, the NRSV, like the NIV, calls them co-workers or ministers, but not deacons. So why did they call Phoebe a deacon? So clearly there's an ideological or political bias here too toward egalitarianism, I think, or at least a shade of it, that the NRSV, New Revised Standard Translators, are doing to promote, you could say, Phoebe to this level of deacon. But so too, the NIV 2011 is seeking to demote her just a little bit to this ambiguous role of the servant. Translations. We can't live with them. Can't live without them. What are you going to do? Those are some of my favorites. Maybe there's a translation gaffe or folly or just something that just boils your blood that you want to tell me about. Put it down in the comments. Would love to see it.